Okay, welcome to the final section of this course, and this section is all about the finishing touches we're going to put on our app, and then we're going to publish it. And when we're talking about finishing touches, there's a few areas that could be improved, and one of them is this effect. When we click on a different filter, we get this full page reload, and this is not ideal because it seems like a lot's going on when really all we're doing is just fetching some new activities, and then our component can re-render just the activities without needing to do this, what looks like a full page reload. And what we'll do is we'll take a look at a solution for that. Another problem is that if I log out as the current user and then I go to activities, then we still get taken to the page. So we do need to think about whether or not the user's actually logged in or not, and should we even let them get this far without actually logging in. So those are a couple of the finishing touches that we want to address. So there's a few things to clean up before we hit the publishing section, and I'm just going to log back in as Bob at test.com and type in the password. And what we're going to start with is this dealing with this full page refresh every time we click on something inside here. And what we can use to resolve this is a recent addition to Semantic UI React, or Semantic UI, and that's something called, if I can find it in this list, a placeholder. So instead of showing a full page, what we can do is add a sort of placeholder inside our application to indicate something's loading. All of the cool sites are using this kind of thing. Netflix use it, Facebook use it, to indicate something is loading and sort of giving you an image of what's about to be loaded before it's actually loaded. So we'll implement that in our application. So let's head back to VS Code, and what we're going to do inside our client app, inside the source folder, inside features and activities in the dashboard, is we're going to add a placeholder to replace our big old loading indicator. And we'll call this activity list item placeholder.tsx. And I do have a snippet for this because the code inside here is really just JSX. So what it is S22.1.0, and this is going to be the full code for our activity list item placeholder. And if we just take a look at what this actually is, all we're doing here is we're bringing in the segment and the button from Semantic UI React, and then we're surrounding these segments, the same segment groups we're using inside our actual activity list items, but the content where we would have actual data has been replaced with these placeholders. So we've got a placeholder header that's going to have a couple of placeholder lines, and these are just sort of static images with some animation on that gives the impression that something's happening. And what we can do with this, if we go back to our activity dashboard, is we can swap our loading components and instead display the placeholder when our page is loading. And this will give our page a more responsive feel to it. So what we'll do, just above the infinite scroll, we'll add some curly brackets, and I'll just copy the condition. So we'll check to see if we're loading initial and the page is equal to 0. And we'll add a ternary operator, and we'll pass in our activity list item placeholder if we're loading, and if we're not, then I'll just add some parentheses, and I'll cut our infinite scroll as well as the activity list and just paste it inside here, and then reformat to hopefully clean this up a bit. And then I can remove the loading component from this, and I'll also be able to remove it from the list of imports as well. So if we're loading, we're just going to display our activity list item placeholder instead. So let's go and take a look and see the effect of this. And I'll just go back to the browser, and if I refresh the page, we still load the app, but then we get the indicator just that the activities are loading, and if I start to click, you can see the effect of this. It's just a much more responsive look, and we're still loading, and we can still see something loading, but instead of a whole page refresh, we've still got access to the rest of our components that make up our page. So a small change, but quite a nice one. There's another thing that bothers me as well, and that's if I do a refresh, and sometimes we see it, it's a very brief flicker of the reactivities in the top left hand corner. And what we want to do is swap that for what we're using for the loading of the application, so we don't see that nasty little bit of text in the top left hand corner. And we'll take a look at that next.